Hey everyone, welcome to today's Explainer. We are diving right into a seriously sweeping historical narrative today. We're talking intense battles, unprecedented miracles, and a massive 600-year-old promise finally coming true. We're looking at the Book of Joshua. And look, this isn't just some dusty ancient military record. It's a really profound story about faith, leadership, and the ultimate fulfillment of a colossal covenant. Let's get into it.
So, the story drops us right into the middle of this massive political vacuum. The legendary leader Moses has just passed away. Imagine the sheer uncertainty of the people, right? But almost immediately, God commands Joshua to step up to the plate with very specific instructions. Be strong and courageous. He's suddenly tasked with leading an entire nation across a flooded river and straight into their long-awaited inheritance.
Now, what's really fascinating here is the name of our central figure itself. Joshua in Hebrew is Yehoshua, which translates to YHWH is salvation. And from a linguistic standpoint, this is the exact Old Testament equivalent of the Greek name Isus, or Jesus. So right from the title page, the text is presenting Joshua as this monumental figure who literally leads his people into their ultimate promised inheritance.
And we have to remember, we're framing our entire explainer around this one central hook. This isn't just a military campaign. It is the spectacular, real-world fulfillment of a land grant promised to the patriarch Abraham over 600 centuries prior. 600 years. Just think about that time frame. For generations, through brutal slavery in Egypt and literally decades of wandering in the wilderness, these people held on to this promise. And Joshua is the book where that monumental wait finally ends.
Let's look at how this transition actually plays out, because before they can settle down, they face an impossible barrier, crossing the Jordan River. And it's at flood stage. But perfectly mirroring the exodus from Egypt 40 years earlier, the waters part. This new generation symbolically crosses on entirely dry ground, a very deliberate echo of the Red Sea. And by day 7, they've set up 12 massive memorial stones at Gilgal, basically ensuring their children and their children's children will never forget this miraculous entry.
Okay, but here's where it gets surprising. Before a single sword is even drawn, the preparation isn't military at all. It's entirely spiritual. First, they renew their covenant through circumcision and celebrating the Passover. Then, the miraculous manna they'd survived on for 40 years just ceases, and they finally eat from the produce of the land itself. After that, Joshua has this profound encounter with a divine warrior, the commander of the Lord's army. The source material notes this as a pre-incarnate appearance of Christ, who basically tells Joshua to take off his sandals because he is standing on holy ground. The ultimate takeaway here, the battle belongs to God, not Joshua.
So that encounter establishes a really crucial point for the entire book. There is a direct, undeniable connection between obedience and success. Every single victory recorded in these texts hinges completely on following instructions, no matter how unconventional they might seem, rather than relying on superior military tactics or brute force. Which naturally brings us to the most famous event in the whole book, the Battle of Jericho.
And wow, this battle brilliantly illustrates victory by incredibly unlikely means. Look at this battle plan. Step 1, march silently around the city for 6 days. Step 2, on the 7th day, march around 7 times, have the priests blow some trumpets, and shout. That is definitely not your standard ancient siege tactic, right? Yet according to the historical accounts, those towering, supposedly impenetrable walls of Jericho just collapse outward, and it happens strictly through unconventional faith and absolute corporate obedience.
But take a look at this stark contrast. This spectacular, miraculous victory at Jericho is immediately followed by a devastating, crushing defeat at a tiny neighboring city called Ai. Why? Well, it all comes down to one man's hidden disobedience. A guy named Achan secretly stole plunder from Jericho, completely violating the direct instructions given to the whole camp. It proves a major theme in the book. Secret sin breaks the covenant of the whole community. Basically, true victory is just impossible without integrity.
All right, we need to pause the narrative here for a second to objectively tackle what is, without a doubt, the most ethically challenging material in the text, the rationale behind the destruction of the Canaanites. Modern readers, understandably, often grapple with how a just God could order such a conquest. So how did the historical source texts actually frame this? Let's take a closer look.
The source texts frame this objectively, not as some arbitrary or random ethnic cleansing, but as a very specific, targeted moral judgment.
First off, there was a 400-year delay. That's 4 centuries of opportunity for the region to turn away from extreme practices, which historical sources confirm included absolute horrors like child sacrifice. Furthermore, individuals in Canaan who did turn to God were spared. A really prominent example is Rahab, a Canaanite prostitute in Jericho, who was shown mercy, saved, and amazingly even brought into the lineage of the Messiah. So within the text, Israel is essentially acting temporarily as an instrument of divine justice. Moving on, the military campaign then accelerates across the southern and northern regions, and it is marked by truly unprecedented miracles. During one massive battle against a southern coalition of kings, Joshua literally prays for the sun to stand still. And according to the text, the sun and moon halted in the sky, extending the daylight so God himself could fight for Israel, even raining down hailstones on the enemy army. Just wild, incredible stuff.
Okay, moving into the second half of the text, from chapters 13 through 22, the focus shifts entirely to dividing the inheritance among the 12 tribes. Now, at first glance, reading through lists of ancient boundaries and cities might seem a bit like, geographical filler, but it's actually a vital theological record. It serves as documented proof that every single family received their exact promised inheritance. The land grant was finally officially being distributed in reality.
And you have to consider Caleb here. What's really interesting about this slide is the number 85, because Caleb is now 85 years old. Remember, he was the only other spy alongside Joshua 45 years earlier to actually believe God would give them the land. Now, at 85, he steps up during this land division and boldly demands the rugged mountain country he was promised. He literally says he's just as vigorous for battle as he was at 40. It's a fantastic testament proving that faithfulness across a lifetime yields incredible rewards.
So the crucial point we keep returning to is this. Despite the intense battles, the occasional human failures, and the multiple decades of waiting, the book of Joshua is fundamentally a narrative of absolute promises perfectly kept. The writer makes it explicitly clear, not one single word of all the good things promised to Israel had failed. Every inch of ground came into their possession, exactly as promised.
Let's move to the end of the explainer and see how all of this builds to a truly dramatic conclusion. Joshua is now an aging 110-year-old leader. He gathers the entire nation together at Shechem for his grand farewell address. He recounts their whole miraculous history, but he doesn't just leave them with a nice history lesson, he gives them a deeply provocative final ultimatum.
He draws a firm line in the sand with one of the most famous declarations in ancient literature. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Joshua is setting the ultimate example of leadership here. He publicly commits his entire household to the God who delivered them from Egypt, and he directly challenges the nation to throw away any foreign idols they might still be harboring. He's telling them to make a definitive choice about exactly who they are going to serve. As we wrap up this remarkable history, we kind of have to turn the mirror on ourselves, don't we? The book of Joshua isn't just about ancient boundaries. It's a profound study on faith and action. So it asks us to consider, in your own life, whose promises are you trusting? Are you walking in obedience to achieve the purpose laid out for you? Ultimately, what promises are you choosing to serve today? Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through the source text. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.